With every fiber in my being, I'm going to try to be serious. When I accepted the responsibility of introducing the dynamic duo that you are going to be blessed by today, I jumped at it, didn't I? That's because I knew that I was going to bring you a vicarious introduction that you would respect. You would not have to depend on me embellishing who these two wonderful leaders of the Westside Food Bank are. And so I called on a person that everybody at Westwood is familiar with. For me, he is the mild-mannered Clark Kent of the Westside Food Bank. And I know that because I've had experience with him for more than 30 years, running around watching him do the supernatural. And so, knowing him and having talked to him about who was going to be his predecessor, I called and said, if you had to say something about these two wonderful young women who are taking the mantle at Westside Food Bank, what would you say? I could not introduce them like this, so I want you to know who you are who you're going to hear about the Westside Food Bank and what it's doing now and the future of the Westside Food Bank. I had been director of Westside Food Bank for about a decade when Genevieve came aboard nearly 20 years ago. The local food need was growing rapidly, and we needed a development director who could make our work better known in the community right away. Jen was able to attract new support and quickly expanded our food provisions to our member agency. When I saw how Genevieve was using every opportunity to improve herself professionally, and when I could see how well she interacted with our staff, board, our member agencies, and our wider networks, I realized that the food bank would not have to look far for a leader to follow me once I was ready to go. Bruce Rankin. You all know Bruce. You've seen him do what he does. He had the passion of Jesus for the Westside Food Bank, and I believe his motto was also, feed my sheep. And that's what I believe Genevieve represents as the chief executive and CEO of the food bank. And this is what he said about Chrissy. Because see, I haven't had much dealing with you, so I needed his help too. Chrissy came to work at the Westside Food Bank nearly 2.5 years ago with an extensive background in business, public relations, and politics. Arriving in the midst of the COVID food assistance crisis, she was immediately able to draw on her professional experience to help the food bank with its fundraising and communications. Now, with surging local need brought on by CalFresh food stamp cuts and high food costs, Chrissy's work in donor relations and event planning has become more crucial. Chrissy's energy, her sunny disposition, and her clear thinking have added extra zest and focus to the world of Westside Food Bank. You don't need to hear another word from me. I turn it over to the esteemed executive officer and the development operator, the development, they'll tell you who they are.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thanks everyone for being here. It's really my honor. We have such a warm place in our heart, all of us at Westside Food Bank, for Westwood Presbyterian Church, because you've been, so instrumental in the success of our work over the years, and in fact, in our very founding. So it's really an honor, and I do offer my thanks to Chrissy, our development manager, for helping to set this up and always, keeping this relationship very warm. So thank you, Chrissy, for all your assistance. And thank you, all of you, for being here. So I'm here to talk a little bit about Westside Food Bank and what's been going on with us. So I have, some slides to share. We'll talk a little bit about facts. But I also just want to share a little bit of some of the stories that we're seeing and how Westside Food Bank is trying to help. So by way of introduction, I'm just curious, how many people in the room have been to Westside Food Bank? Have ever been to our warehouse? Or wonderful, okay. So, we've been in the same building for about getting close to 30 years, I think, at our warehouse in Santa Monica, and that's a facility that we rent, and we've been renting for all these years. But really, even before the pandemic, we were starting to outgrow that space because the need for food assistance in the community was just growing so tremendously. And I'm happy to say that we now, after searching for about a year, we were able to find another warehouse to be our annex space, to give us additional space to help us have, be able to meet the increased need. So that's also a rental. We're there for about 2 years. And right now we're in the midst of a capital campaign feasibility study. So we're trying to determine our capacity to raise money to buy a building and hopefully provide Westside Food Bank with the security and the stability to get out of having to pay rent every month and hopefully own a building that will serve as the hub for food assistance in our community. So that's a little bit of what's going on right now, but I'll go ahead and share some of our slides. So this is a picture of a couple of our team members and me in our Santa Monica warehouse, Milton and Quincy. And a little bit about me. So Bruce's very, very kind and generous words, really warm my heart, and he's a tough act to follow. Bruce was my mentor and friend for so many years throughout the food bank. And 20 years ago, when I first came to Westside Food Bank, what wasn't mentioned in that introduction is that I myself was a single mom with 3 young children, school-aged kids. My youngest actually was preschool age, and I was at that time living with the assistance of the government safety net. So everything from housing assistance to food stamps, what we now call CalFresh, to childcare assistance, all of it. And I was really struggling. I was food insecure, I was housing insecure. I was trying to find my way back to Los Angeles, where I feel most at home. I'm originally from New York. And it was really getting the job at Westside Food Bank 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago, that put me on the path out of poverty and into being able to support my family. So I come to this work with a really clear understanding of what it's like to be on the other side, what it's like to be that terrified mom. Just trying to think, what are we going to do? Where are we going to live? What are we going to eat? How am I going to feed my kids? And the incredible relief that comes from knowing that there is a safety net, it's really my honor and privilege to be able to provide that to other people and the people that we serve. So it's really meaningful work for me that I bring my heart to. And I think that's true of all of our team members. Everyone really comes to this work because our hearts are in it and we care about the community. So again, here's another photo of our wonderful Santa Monica warehouse. So our mission, and we actually changed our mission statement a little bit a few years ago when we went through a strategic planning process that we're actually renewing right now. We're kind of restarting strategic planning. But our mission is to end hunger in our communities. And we do that by providing access to free, nutritious food. And we acquire food, we distribute food, but that's really serving the needs of today. We also recognize that we play a role in trying to build a community that doesn't leave so many people out. And so we do that by engaging, like we're doing today, and advocating for a strong food assistance network. So last week I was in Sacramento with the California Association of Food Banks for our annual meeting and our Capital Action Day. So we were visiting our legislators, to advocate for policies that help people, because food banks can't do it alone. We're part of a bigger system, and we really need good policy. So we were advocating for things like increasing the minimum CalFresh benefit to at least $50 a month. Because for some folks who are getting less than that, adults without children, it's hardly even worth going through the paperwork and the administrative hurdles if you're getting $18. So we want to increase those benefits, and we want to increase funding for food banks, because we know that a big hunger cliff is about to happen because of what Mark referenced, the expiration of COVID additional CalFresh benefits, as well as the expiration of eviction moratoriums, which means that folks are having to pay back rent. And for many people, that's in the tens of thousands of dollars. So not only are they trying to pay their current rent, but they're trying to pay back rent during the COVID period when they didn't, when the eviction moratorium was in place. So we're really worried about that. So a little bit about our origin, and I think many of you know this origin story because Westwood Presbyterian Church was part of the Westside Ecumenical Council that helped to found Westside Food Bank, over 40 years ago, when many small faith-based and community-based organizations were trying to get food out to people, but they just couldn't be efficient because there wasn't a hub, there wasn't the space to take a whole truckload of food all at once. And so that was really the idea behind founding Westside Food Bank, was to make a hub so that we could be more efficient. That's why there's a middle, agency in between the direct service agencies. And so now we are the primary supplier for more than 60 agencies that have food programs in West L.A. County. So how do we work? It's, we acquire food, we sort the food. Those of you who've been to our warehouse probably were there sorting food, and then we distribute it. So in terms of acquisition, it's really two arms. We acquire food through donations and then wholesale food purchases. So the donation side, a big chunk of that comes from the California Association of Food Banks Farm to Family program. And this is a program that tries to recover food that would otherwise go to waste, maybe not even be harvested on farms, because either it's too big, it's too small, it's too ugly, or there's just too much of it all at once. And so the association works with those farmers. We pay a handling and transportation fee, and then that food is donated to food banks. And because it's very perishable food, no one food bank can take a whole truckload of, say, broccoli at once. It would just be too much all at once. And so we share truckloads among food banks. So that truck full of broccoli or any other produce item will stop at food banks in the Central Valley. It'll stop in Ventura, maybe in Ojai, then it'll come to us, and then maybe go down to Orange County and San Diego. So we all cooperate in that effort. We also get donated food from community food drives, which I'm guessing all of you have probably participated in. I'm sure some of your donations have ended up in our warehouse and then distributed out to our agencies. During COVID, that was really something we had to kind of put on hold, partially because people were not meeting in person to have a place to bring food to, but also because the need expanded so much and we didn't have enough space. And really only now that for the past few months since we've been in our bigger annex warehouse, we've been able to not only encourage food drives, but to actively seek sources of donated food. Because there was a period of time where we literally had to say no and turn away, even truckloads that were offered because we just didn't have the space to put it. And so now that we have a bigger space, at least for the next couple of years, we're able to really actively source and solicit donated food in a way that we've been hampered from doing for the past few years. So that's really exciting. And then purchasing, we buy from wholesalers. So just like Vaughn's or Ralph's buy from wholesale food brokers, that's what we do at Westside Food Bank. We buy food on the wholesale market and then we distribute it. And that's part of the efficiency. So once you can buy a whole truckload at a time, that's as cheap as food gets. And people always say, oh, do you get a discount? Well, no, we don't get a discount, but we do buy wholesale and we're very good customers. And we do have good relationships with our vendors, so if they have food that's getting close to the expiration date, they'll donate it or give us a discount on those kinds of things. But for the most part, we're buying regularly on the wholesale level. So when we get food, especially donated food, both from that farm to family program, it comes in these giant bins all at once. And we need to make it easy for our agencies to get that food. We don't want them digging through bins. So we have volunteers sort the fresh produce into boxes, and then we're able to put those boxes in our inventory system so our agencies can order them. And it's the same with donated food. So when we get food from food drives, it comes in a barrel or a box. It's all kinds of different things, and we want to organize it and make it easy for our agencies. So our distribution model has changed a little bit, really, during COVID, and in ways that make us even more efficient. So here you can see a truck from Village for Vets, which is one of our wonderful partners, providing service at the West L.A. VA. And what you see is a staff person loading a pallet of food into their truck. So what our agencies do now is, rather than come in and shop, which is what they used to do pre-COVID, we've gotten much more efficient. We have a new online inventory system, and our agencies can put in an order a few days ahead of time. Then our staff will pull all the items from that order, put it on a pallet, and then they come during a scheduled window to pick up their food order, and we put it right into their truck. And currently they're shopping a little bit for fresh produce, because we have one of our biggest challenges, and for many years it's been a big challenge, has been cooler space. So we don't really have enough cooler space. That's one of the things that we're working on right now, to put some coolers into our new annex warehouse, because we could accept a lot more donated food if we had more cooler space. But right now, because we have a lack of cooler space, we don't have enough space to put items into our inventory system. So agencies get a 30-minute window to shop in our coolers for things like eggs, chicken, and fresh produce. But all of their dry goods are pre-ordered, pre-packed, and put into their vehicles during their window. So the need, this is, and honestly, some of these statistics are a little bit out of date, because we're seeing an explosion of need right now. But generally speaking, and this is data from last year, more than 800,000 households in Los Angeles, almost a full quarter of the population, experienced food insecurity. And that number gets even higher when you look at Black and brown communities, when you look at people that are low income and very low income. But just compared to a year ago, and again, these numbers are a little bit higher, people have to spend more. Inflation is affecting everyone. So goods and services in general are up. People are spending, almost $400 a month more. Shelter is up. I mean, that's one of the highest needs in our community. We have very high cost of living for housing. People are spending, and I would say it's probably more like $100 more per month on food, and closer to probably 13 or 14% more on groceries. And you see it yourself, right? You go to the grocery store and you're like, how is this $100? I have 3 things, right? Or something like that. So this is affecting us, our wholesale buying, but it's also affecting the people that we serve. Eggs are a really particular example. They're one of our most popular foods. I mean, eggs are so versatile. You can put them in everything, and they have high protein, they've got minerals. It's a really great food, really popular food. And it's been a struggle. It's one of the most requested things from both the people we serve and our agencies. And the prices, the wholesale prices for eggs, are more than triple what they were a year ago. And that has not abated. And there were some times when we just couldn't even get eggs. I mean, it was just, we'd put in orders and they couldn't be filled because there just wasn't enough, even at the higher price. So, when you go to the store and you're buying eggs and the prices look like they've come down, that's a loss leader. That store is probably taking a loss on those eggs, so you come in and buy other things. But we know that on the wholesale level, the prices are really, really high. And we were really excited because for a few weeks in the early spring, we just couldn't get eggs at all. And then we got lucky and got a really good price on eggs and had eggs for Easter. So we didn't want to have an Easter without eggs, so that was very good. And you know, in California, it's a sad fact that we have the highest insecurity rate in the whole country. And with California being a state with so many farms and so much food, it's really just unthinkable that we have so many food insecure residents statewide, 30%. And again, this is not going to be a surprise to anyone here. The high cost of living in our service area in Los Angeles, and West Los Angeles in particular, our families are spending, you know, 50, 60, 70% of their income just to stay housed. And that's a really big challenge. You know, I mean, I'm seeing it. My rent just went up. And for low-income folks, it's really a big challenge. And, you know, we used to give statistics for two-bedroom apartments. You know, like if I was giving this presentation 10 years ago, we used to give statistics for what it costs to rent a two-bedroom apartment. But now those statistics are so crazy that we have to, you know, you can wrap your head around what a one-bedroom apartment costs in Los Angeles County. And if you're working minimum wage, you have to work 88 hours a week to afford the average one-bedroom apartment. And even a middle wage worker needs to work 53 hours per week, so more than full-time. And you know, this is a challenge, and sometimes people say to me, well, like, why don't people move? You know, if it's so expensive to live in West L.A., why don't they move? And I think, you know, especially for you as members of a faith community, it's just not that easy. You know, there are folks who are elderly, who live in low, you know, rent control housing, or maybe they bought their home, you know, 30, 40 years ago when they were more affordable. And, you know, for one, you can't eat your house. And people may want to be near their aging parents. People may want to live in the community that they grew up in. They may want to go to the church and have their kids go to the school that they were raised in, that their parents were married in, that they were married in. And so I think the importance of community and the tie to community is a really key human factor that often people don't think about when you just look at, you know, the cost of an apartment or the cost of a house. You know, there's a community piece, and we're trying to help keep communities together. So we did a little survey of our agencies because we wanted to know what do they need from us and how can we better serve. And 91% said that they need more food. And this is what we're seeing now. Everyone, all of them are seeing an increased demand and want more food from us. They also want more variety. One of the things that more space allows us to do is to have more variety. So I talked a little bit about our inventory system. At any given time, we have about anywhere between 20 and 30 unique products available on offer, which means that each one of those products has to have a pallet space that our staff can pick from as they pull orders. And that's not even counting fresh produce. And so we're really doing our best. We have a big commitment to nutrition and making sure that we're providing the full range of nutrients, especially because people now need our food on a regular basis to feed their families. Fresh vegetables. That is the number one thing that's being requested. Everybody wants more fresh produce. And we are working really hard to provide it, and thankfully we have access to this wonderful donated produce, but we need more cooler space to really take advantage of that. So right now we have about 20, 25 coolers, pallet spaces in our coolers, and we've determined that we need about 60 to really serve the community. So that's part of what we're looking at with our capital campaign, and even with doing some temporary improvements to our leased space to bring in, because that's the number one thing that will enable us to provide more food, is having more cooler space. Okay, so now you're in for a treat. When we talk about the impact of eating a diet that's healthy and has a lot of fresh vegetables, we actually have one of our clients who visits one of our mobile food distributions, which is something we started during COVID. We have a little video talking about Jay, and Jay is someone who lost his job and needed to get some food assistance, and he went to our food pantry at Virginia Avenue Park, which was a partnership that we started with the city of Santa Monica during COVID, because, you know, one of the things that I worry about is the sustainability of our network. And we saw that happen. So when COVID happened, a lot of our food is distributed by entirely volunteer-run food pantries, and many of those volunteers are seniors who are aging, and they just couldn't handle the capacity. So we had several pantries that closed in Santa Monica, and so we partnered with the city to create a pantry at a city park. And during the COVID period, they staffed it, and then when they needed to take their staff back after about a year and a half, we converted that into a pantry that our staff runs. And so Jay is a client at one of our pantries, and I will turn it over to him to tell you a little bit about his experience.
2 years ago, I found out that I was old, diabetic, and obese, with fatty liver disease and all kinds of nonsense like that. Then we had COVID, and I was no longer working. I was freaked out, but I got to the point where I had to start coming to the food bank for food. And now they give us, usually there's a box of organic and a box of canned goods. From eating this diet here, transitioning to this diet, I lost over 40 pounds. And my doctor tells me I'm no longer diabetic because I've been coming here. I'm learning more about the natural environment of food and what you can do with it and what there is of it from scratch now. You feel like you've earned it more. I don't feel like I have to put salt and seasonings on everything. I'm enjoying the natural flavors. There's a certain amount of satisfaction out of preparing your own food that I had not bothered with for years. But the fact that I'm willing to prepare my own food, that it's, when I eat it, it's the product of my own work.
Yeah, you can see where we love that story because it really talks about how providing regular, consistent access to fresh produce and things like eggs and high-protein foods. More than 67% of our food that we distribute is either fresh produce or high-protein foods and nutritious staples. So just a few numbers last year, and our fiscal year goes from July to June. So last fiscal year, we provided close to the equivalent of about 4 million meals. We served about 72,000 households, representing over 150,000 people. And like I said, 67% of our food is fresh produce, protein, and dairy items, things like eggs. So, and here you can sort of see it on a chart. So you see lots of fresh fruits and vegetables in the yellow, protein, meat, and fish, dairy products, grains, and then miscellaneous groceries, which is all the like cereal and snacks and various things, soups. So this shows a little bit of our growth. So the first column that you see, that was before COVID, essentially. The last 3 months of that fiscal year were the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And really, we were providing about a little over 2.5 million pounds of food from our warehouse every year. And that's about what our budget was, too. We were providing, our budget was about $2.5 million. And then thankfully, during the height of the COVID period, we got a lot of support from government sources. So we got both food donated as well as some financial support. And that's why you see our poundage went way up, but our budget didn't go up at that point because we still had access to a lot of donated food. We also were renting an annex warehouse that was 2 doors down from us that was owned by Crossroads School. And that gave us an additional 10 or 11,000 square feet of space, so we had more space to take in food. And then really last year, we had to raise a lot more money to keep that up because we didn't have the same level of food donations coming in from some of the pandemic assistance. And this is just a little fun fact in terms of the neighborhoods that provide Westside Food Bank with the most support. Los Angeles, Santa Monica, and Pacific Palisades are really big sources of support for us. And who do we serve? It's everyone. Honestly, it really is. It's families with children, It's unemployed, underemployed, low wage, and now really middle wage workers too, folks who found themselves needing food assistance really for the first time lately because of the inflation and some of the stressors. More and more of our food is going to seniors. We provide food to women and children in domestic violence shelters. We provide food for unhoused folks, so that's all transitional aged youth and also adults. People who have health conditions, mental health conditions, chronic illnesses, and then college students and veterans. This is an area that we've seen a tremendous amount of need. We have the biggest population of unhoused veterans in the country, another shameful fact about Los Angeles. And we feel like we can make a dent in that. So we've been working very closely with the West L.A. VA. We started a food distribution there off the back of our truck several years ago. That was actually our first foray into direct service. And now we have a pantry there that's serving over 100 veterans a week. But we're also providing food to a number of the other social service agencies that support and house veterans on the campus. So I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with New Directions for Veterans, as well as Step Up on Second, Salvation Army Transitional Village, some of our newer partners like Village for Vets, the Bandini Foundation that provides some vocational training and jobs for vets up at the golf course. If you didn't know, there's a golf course, beautiful golf course, 9 holes up at the top of the VA campus. And they also have a food pantry for the vets that work there. And then college students has, even before the pandemic, like 2/3 of community college students were food insecure and 25% of UC students. And those figures have grown through the course of the pandemic. So we are really doing what we can to try to address that. Again, our new mobile pantries, these are ways for us to go into communities that are underserved. And we're working now actually with the RAND Corporation to try to identify other communities within our service area that might be underserved, that may need our help with additional mobile food pantries. But just so you can see what that looks like, at the VA, that was our first one. And these numbers are a little out of date because the need has grown. So we're serving close to 100 veterans every week at the VA. Virginia Avenue Park, we're seeing about 175 families every week. That's the one that Jay goes to. We also have a pantry in Culver City at Farragut Avenue Elementary School that serves some of the families from the school, but also the neighborhood and the community. And then the West L.A. Civic Center. That was an underserved community there. There's the Latino Resource Center, and they serve a number of families. It's like where all the congressional offices are in West L.A., over there on Santa Monica Boulevard. And then we also have a pantry at the VA at the Fisher House that's a drive-through, and that one happens quarterly. And also when there's holidays or big events. So we had a big Easter distribution there. We work with schools. So we're actually looking to expand that as well. But right now we work with the Culver City Unified School District for their backpack program. And these are programs that send children home with food over the weekend, because a lot of kids are getting their breakfast and lunch at school. And one win we can point to, advocacy works, is that California is one of only a handful of states that now provides universal school lunches. So free food for all children in any school, in any public school in California, which is wonderful because it's just unthinkable to think that children are not getting lunch because they didn't bring 35 cents with them to school that day. And we won that through advocacy in California, but across the country, that's not the case in most states. So there's more work to be done, but thankfully in California, we have overcome that, but kids still need food on the weekends, and that's why we do these backpack programs. So we also work with Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District at every level. So the elementary schools, the middle schools, the high schools, those kids are getting food to take home over the weekend. The colleges, Mount St. Mary's University, both campuses, we provide food to. They do a beautiful outdoor farmers market style distribution where students can come and pick their groceries. It's really nice. The UCLA Food Closet, we started working with UCLA back in 2009. That was one of our first programs on a college campus. Santa Monica City College, which you'll see a little bit more about. And we just added Otis College of Design. They have a really nice pantry in their garage serving their students that are low income. So Santa Monica College is kind of a standout. They went from doing an outdoor once a week distribution, and they saw so much need, so many students really, really needing help, that they actually found some space on campus to create what they're calling the bodega program, which for me, I'm a Puerto Rican from the Bronx, so a bodega is right up my alley. And it's essentially a free store. So students can go in there 5 days a week and shop for groceries, as well as hygiene items and other kind of basic necessities. It's really a wonderful program. So there's a lot of ways to help Westside Food Bank. Donating funds, that's obviously a big need because we can take those dollars and turn them into truckloads of food. So that's really the reason for a food bank to exist, is because we can leverage the economy of scale. We can turn every dollar into enough food for 4 nutritious meals. And right now, our need is really high. I mean, I'm about to send out a press release next week talking about how the end of the COVID emergency is really the ushering in the onset of a hunger crisis. Because as I said, they've lost their CalFresh benefits, additional benefits. The eviction moratoriums have expired, people owe back rent. I think about a mother like me, so where I was 20 years ago, a single mom, just trying to figure out where I was gonna live and how I was gonna feed my family with 3 young children. So a mom like me today, last year she lost $300 per month per child from the additional earned income tax credit. So she's trying to feed her family and meet her needs with $900 a month less. And then last month, that mother lost another $300 in additional CalFresh benefits. So that mother, who's just like I was 20 years ago, is now trying to stay housed and feed her family with $1,200 a month less in resources than she had a year ago. And that's just not a sustainable proposition. And what is she gonna do? She's gonna try to get as much free food as possible from food banks like Westside Food Bank. And we see that. And now she might be facing $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in unpaid rent. So we're really nervous about this. We are really concerned about we're already seeing a huge increase in need. I lead a group of food providers on the West Side, and we meet every month over Zoom to just, it started during COVID to share resources, and in the beginning it was like, okay, who has PPE and where can we get vaccinations? But now we're just talking about how to coordinate services, what are we seeing, how can we help each other, and everyone is reporting a huge spike in need just over the last few weeks. And it's partially because of the expiration of those additional CalFresh benefits. It's also because the eviction moratorium and just inflation. We're all seeing it at the grocery store. So we're concerned about that. And so we're asking the community to help. We're reinstating food drives. We want to get as much donated food as possible. But again, funding us is the most efficient way, because you go to the store and you take your dollar, you can buy 1 can of beans. But if you give us $1, we can buy a case of beans. So that's why a food bank exists. And we're inviting folks to come back in and volunteer again. Now that we have a bigger space and we're getting more donated food, we can really use that help. So again, funds, super helpful for us. When we do hold food drives, we want everyone to, give the kind of food that you'd be proud to feed your own family. Not the old 3-year-old can from the back of your pantry. We also do what we call virtual food drives, because, like today, I know there are some folks who are watching from home. Not everyone is coming into services or coming into schools. So a lot of organizations are doing what we call a hybrid food drive, where some folks will bring food in person, but we also can put up a customized website where you can have your folks donate funds to help us buy food. So that's a great way to kind of do a little bit of both. We're welcoming volunteers again, so we're excited about that. And then just some of our contact information, our social media. We don't have a big budget for marketing, so we rely on the community to help spread the word. And we have a wonderful team now that is helping to produce content like that J video. So if you follow us on social media and like and share and do all those things, there's a lot of great content on there that will help you understand what's going on, in real time at Westside Food Bank. Again, I think that we don't do this alone. I mean, this happens through community support. And the community at Westwood Presbyterian Church has just been such a huge, tremendous source of not just financial support, which we need and we use and it's wonderful, but also just the fellowship, the knowing that we're in it together, the encouraging calls that I get from Mark, that continue to bolster my spirits, and knowing that we have the support of the community. It means so much to us and to our staff to know that there's other people out there who care and who see what we're doing and who want to help and support and, even just offer words of encouragement. It really means so much. So thank you so much for your attention. And yeah, we're happy to take questions. And Chrissy, if you want to join me and maybe help field some questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, I look at this and then I think of Costco, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you get like food from Costco and these big food machines? Do they give donations? Because if not, they should.
We do get some. Food rescue is challenging. And I will say that we do have a food rescue program, but for us, we find it's more efficient to rescue the food directly from the farm. Because once the food's been sitting at a grocery store, especially with perishable and prepared food, by the time Ralph's doesn't want it, we don't want it either.
Right.
In terms of packaged food,
Right.
We do get some of that donated, but it's not a big source for us.
Really?
The grocery stores have gotten a lot more efficient over the years with barcoding, and as they were donating and getting those receipts, they were kind of going like, well, why are we donating so much food? We need to get more efficient, and they did get more efficient. And honestly, there's a way in which that's good. We want them to be efficient because that's part of the overall network. So we recognize that food banks can't do it alone. We want groceries to be inexpensive. We love that there are 99-cent stores that are providing, organic produce. So a lot of those kinds of discount stores are taking some of the food that otherwise would have been donated. And it helps to make the whole system more efficient. But, we do our best. And a lot of those kinds of donations are done on a more regional basis. So they end up going to the L.A. Food Bank that has, regional relationships across many communities. And we support that as well. We're partners with the L.A. Food Bank. They serve the other 9/10 of the county that Westside Food Bank doesn't serve. So we work together.
Well, that's interesting because I think that's what's hard to grasp because of big LA and this, because we had contacted, the group I'm with, we had contacted like Ashley Furniture and got a donation of 100 beds plus. But it was more for a big, a county. So, yeah, I can see where.
Yeah, although, when you think about it, LA County is the size of a country. We are a huge county. We're the biggest school district in the country. And so we're operating on a scale that's literally like the scale of a nation. So for Westside Food Bank to be 1/10 of LA County, it's like being 1/10 of a country. And I think it can be hard to wrap your head around that, but we're so big. And so, our food, again, 153,000 people, it's honestly more than that now because we're seeing a tremendous increase in need. When I started at the food bank almost 20 years ago, we used to see like a 4% increase in the need for food assistance. And we used to see people coming to our member pantries, which is the vast majority of our food. So out of all the food that we distribute, 80% of it goes out through food pantries that give out free groceries. That's the biggest portion. And the other, somewhere between 12 and 20%, depending on the year, goes to programs that give out meals, right? So shelters, after-school programs, congregate meals, senior meals. But that's the smallest portion of our food. Most of it goes out through free groceries. And that's about 25 pantries that we serve that really distribute, the bulk of that 5 million pounds of food a year. And out of those 25 pantries, only about 5 or so have any paid staff. So they're, it's really volunteer run. This is why I'm a little concerned about the sustainability of the network and why we're preparing to do more direct service. But those are the places that see the increase in need. So a pantry that, 4 years ago, 5 years ago was serving 100 families, they might now be serving 300 families. That's the increase in need. And it's staggering. And it's just, we're doing our best to keep up with it. But we're also seeing that people need food regularly. So those pantries are serving families, the same families every single week. They're telling me that 75% of the people that come regularly. And so we're a part of feeding people day in and day out. Whereas 20 years ago, it was people would come to a food pantry because, the car broke down and they needed a little extra help, or somebody, got sick or couldn't work for a few weeks, and they needed extra help. So it was really kind of emergency, occasional food provision. But now we're a regular part of how people are feeding their families day in and day out.
Something that we don't hear often, that we've been privy to here at Westwood Church, is we deal with a food pantry at Wilshire Presbyterian Church in the near downtown. They serve 300 families every Monday. And every single week, they run out of food with people still in line. And that is the stark reality of the need that we are helping to address. And I myself know intimately what the Westside Food Bank is doing. And again, with this agency, like the others that Westwood was instrumental in founding, my only lamentation is that they've outgrown us. And sad part is, the way they've outgrown us is the overwhelming nature of the need that they are servicing. We could not do it without the food bank having developed all those partnerships and having all those mobile things. So, yes.
It's a challenge, and like I said, we work very closely with the LA Food Bank, and they have a 600 agency waiting list. So they have 600 agencies that would like to get food from them, but are on a waiting list because they also don't have the capacity to serve. So we're looking to see what can we do to fill in some of those gaps, and we're actually looking at expanding our service area a little bit to try to accommodate some of those agencies. It's a challenge for us, but I'm super committed. Like, I don't care what it takes. We're going to do this. We're going to keep people fed. We're going to keep the lights on. We're going to keep the operation going because we have to. Like Mark said, we've grown in proportion to the need. And this is our mission. We are the Westside Food Bank. If we're not doing it, who's going to do it? So I'm committed. We're going to make it happen. We are making it happen.
I assume over the years you've received less from WPC as well as other organizations. Is that correct? Have we become less of a donor to?
Yeah, there was a lot of money raised at WPC with the musicale.
Which is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I know that
George Fenimore.
George Fenimore, yeah. he was a force. So I think there has been a little bit less because of that. For this community, that's probably the biggest driver. And we're talking to our donors about seeing what they can do to increase their giving, because our costs are going up. We've made this tremendous commitment to expand. We've more than doubled our footprint in terms of our warehouse space. The amount of food we're distributing, like I said, pre-COVID, it was about 2.5 million. Now we're about 5 million. Our staff has increased. So we have fixed costs. We've made a commitment to expansion at a time when some of our funding sources are drying up. We're seeing less support from the government. One example is our emergency food and shelter program, which is money from FEMA. Last year, we got the biggest FEMA grant we'd ever gotten, which was $900,000. It was amazing. We were like, oh my God, this is incredible. We got normally somewhere in the $200,000 to $250,000 range. And for a while, we were really nervous because we didn't have a warehouse to put food in to spend that money. Thankfully, we signed the lease on our new warehouse in February, and all that money had to be spent by April, and we filled the warehouse with food. And it was amazing and great. And then came time to make that application again this year, and we were limited to only asking for $110,000 because they said any agency between the 2 years you could only get just over $1 million, and we had just gotten $900,000, but no warning last year. And then we just got our award letter for this year, and it came in at $16,000. This is the lowest our federal funding has ever been. We've never had a year that it's been less than $100,000. And so to go from last year, $900,000 to $16,000 this year, it's a little scary at a time when our revenues are not coming in at the level that we had projected. And our costs are up, not just because we've expanded, but because of inflation. So we're nervous. We did hear that there's going to be an additional funding cycle, so I'm hopeful that we'll get a little more revenue from the federal government, but that's why we try not to rely too much on the federal government. Our strategic plan specifically calls for us to rely on any government sources for less than 20% of our revenue. And it's really private sources that drive what we do. It's 80% or more is from individuals, just folks like you in the community who give either directly to us or who give to the church and then the church gives to us. Private foundations is another huge source. Because again, it's so fickle. How do you plan, right?
Yeah, right.
It's terrifying to go to, and there are a lot of organizations that rely exclusively on government, and that's just not sustainable. Yes?
You mentioned that as a component of your work, you engage in advocacy, and I wondered if there are any specific public policies that you all are kind of pushing for or advocating for at this point in time that we should know about. You know what? I will send you the list because I'm not the person that can keep all the AB 500, right.
SB this or that. Essentially, we're advocating for more money for food banks. We're asking for another $182 million to go to food banks. We're advocating to increase the CalFresh benefit. We're advocating for summer food programs for kids. But I will send the list so that you have, which bills to tell your representatives to support. Martha?
Yeah, I was wondering, to get CalFresh or any of these other benefits, there's often a lot of paperwork and requirements. Do you and the agencies you work with basically hand out to anybody who shows up and says they need it?
Every agency has their own way to determine the need and to qualify folks for food distribution. I would say at our pantries, yes, anyone who shows up gets food. And at any one of our agencies, anyone who shows up for the first time always walks away with food. Different agencies have different requirements, usually based on some percentage of the federal poverty level. I will say that during COVID, most of them suspended those requirements because we just want to reduce barriers. And we find that there's less of a concern about fraud. It's not easy or really that convenient to get food at a pantry. Often you have to stand in line. Especially these days, you get a pre-packed bag of food, so you're not necessarily choosing what you get. So I would say that most pantries have loosened those restrictions to reduce barriers. And I think especially because we're seeing so many new people who've never needed food assistance before. There's a lot of shame with that. And there's a lot of concern about like, am I gonna be, are my neighbors gonna see me? What do I have to do? And so we're trying everything we can to reduce shame and stigma, especially for college students too. Like, we wanna make it easy. Just come and get food, no questions asked. We're just trying to provide for you. And I think also with immigrant communities, which we see a lot of need in immigrant communities, especially over the last few years, there's been a lot of fear. Concern about, am I getting on a list? Immigrant communities may not always understand the difference between CalFresh, which is a government program, and a food pantry, which is private. So we also want to make those folks feel safe and feel comfortable that they can get food without having any negative repercussions. Yes.
But the presentation was excellent. Thank you for doing this. There are a lot of people here in our church that really appreciate hands-on opportunities. I know you said that now they're starting to have people come in and sort, but just curious and this might be something we follow up on, but is there are there set times for that or?
No, we kind of do it on, when people need to come in or to kind of work around their schedule. We can do it weekdays or weekends, but definitely there's opportunities to do some food sorts. And also food drives as well. That's another way. We could definitely use the help in that regard. We have boxes. You can reach out to me and I can facilitate that.
So I plan on following up just
Okay,
because
good.
we will have people that will be interested in sorting
Yeah.
or doing, I think also it's interesting when people get to see the food bank or, now that there's an opportunity to be there too,
Right,
to
right.
help, but I'll plan on following up.
That's great. One more thing I wanted to say, as far as giving, it is hard sometimes because there is a fluctuation. Sometimes we get more gifts, sometimes we get less. But we have monthly givers. We have about 100 right now. We're trying to grow that, and that helps us a lot. Just have kind of a sustained monthly amount that's coming in. If you can do $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever is convenient for you, that's definitely something that we would love any kind of help on that.
It's nice to have that consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can welcome people. I mean, one of the things I'm really excited about with our new facility is being able to bring people in to volunteer, but also for tours. So if you have a group that wants to just come and see what we're doing, we're happy to show you around. And actually yesterday we had a number of volunteers in our annex warehouse because it was the National Association of Letter Carriers food drive, where people put food out by their mailbox and then the letter carriers pick it up and we pick it up from post offices. So we're actually going to have some food to sort over the next few weeks or so. And because we're doing more direct service, we're actually taking that food that comes to us in food drives and putting together our own, we're starting to put together our own food boxes because we were getting some through some government funding that's now going away, so we're going to have to make our own food boxes. And so we need to have we sort it all into this box is all beans and this box is all rice, and that way when we're packing food boxes, we can have those sources to pull from. As well as the food that we buy. So we make up the difference in what we don't get in donations by buying food, and that's both fresh produce and dry goods. And did you have a question, Ellen?
I did. What does a cooler cost?
That is a great question. So we're looking at two different options, because right now we know that we only know for sure that we have this space for 2 years. So our ideal would be to build a modular walk-in cooler that our forklifts could go in, and that's probably somewhere in the range of $150,000. But we're also looking at containers, so sort of like a truck trailer, and those are in the range of about $20,000 each, and we probably would need about 8 of those. So we're in the $100,000 to $150,000 range either way.
And that's refrigerated trucks that you would park on the...
Yeah, not really trucks, but sort of containers.
The trailers, yes.
Mhm, yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that I was waiting to ask you about, because we discussed it, was the tours. I think that I serve on the advisory committee for the capital campaign for the you didn't mention it, $31.4 million the food bank is raising in order to purchase the 28,000 square foot facility?
Ideal, either this building or a building very much like it. So the building we're in right now is not currently on the market. It's owned by Wildwood School, and I had a really great conversation with their head of school. They initially bought the building because they're sort of like us. They're renting two different facilities for their two, upper school, lower school, and they thought this building could be their one school. But once they brought in the architects and all of that, they realized it wasn't quite the right facility. So they're looking for their dream building, and if they find their dream building, they'd be open to selling us our dream building, which is the building we're in right now. I mean, it couldn't be better. I can't even tell you. It's got the access for a semi-truck to come in off of a busy street. I mean, in just trying to find this place, over the last year, I looked at 30 properties on paper. I visited about 20 in person. We found a handful that could maybe work, but not very well. And we entered into lease negotiations on those. And then this one came up at a really low rate, just because it had been empty for a while, but that's not a rate we're gonna be able to sustain. So in 2 years, that rent could go up significantly. So we're hoping that we can buy the building, or a building like it. But warehouse space on the west side is fast disappearing. I mean, I kind of wish we had done a capital campaign 10 years ago. But we got to start from where we are. And yeah, it's a big, to buy that building and our capital campaign has, at least the test case that we're making has built into it a couple of years of operating expenses at that bigger level, although we're already doing it. So. And it also has in a little bit of things like a slight loss in annual fund from the people donating to capital. So we'll get the results of our feasibility study at the end of June, and then our board will make a determination as to what level of a campaign we think we can achieve. But I'm an optimist and I'm a fundraiser at heart, and I'm like, one or two angel donors that can write a 7-figure check, that could get us there, and I think it's exciting because, 35 million or 32 million, it sounds like a big number, but we have 3.3 million from the state that we have to use on a capital purchase, so that's huge. And I think, the LA Food Bank just finished some level $130 million capital campaign. So, if someone is at a level where they can give a 7-figure gift, you are making the difference for Westside Food Bank. This is make or break. For some of these other organizations, a $10 million gift is like a brick on the wall, But for us, this is the long-term sustainability, feeding this community for the next several generations. And I know we can do it. I'm committed to doing it. I don't care what the feasibility report says. We're doing it because we have to. We have to do it. We have to be able to be here to feed the community. Absolutely. What's going to happen when those 20 pantries that are all being run by, some equivalent of 4 75-year-olds in the back of a church, when they can't do it anymore? We're going to have to do it, and we're going to need the space to have all that food. So,
Well, we can't tell you how much we appreciate you braving Mother's Day to come and these are committed people that are here.
Yeah, and happy Mother's Day.
Yes, without question. But we, David, the chair of the Mission and Outreach Committee, and I will work together with you to bring about the tour so that our congregation can see firsthand what it is that is happening, what we're doing, and we can also generate the interest in the volunteerism that they have indicated they want to do, hands-on.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm happy to give a tour. Like I said, we're in the building. We're doing the work. So we just got to keep it going. And when I look at some, we're also looking at this sort of like worst case scenario. What if we can only raise 10 million? And then I'm looking at some of the buildings, way out of our service area that don't have the same kind of truck access, that won't give us the same kind of cooler space that we need. And I'm just like, that's not going to happen. We got to do this. We got to make it happen in the kind of space that's going to let us serve the community in the way that the community needs it.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
just one more thing, if anybody who didn't sign in, if you could sign in, just so we could know who's here.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, and we'll keep you posted, you know, we'll keep all the information going, so you know what we're up to. And I'm happy to give a tour. If there's anyone you can think of that needs to hear this, let's bring them in and show them around our warehouse, and show them what we can do.
Thank
Do
you.
that.
Thank you.
We can do that.
Thank you so much.